G'day, cheers. Just gonna pour one of my, this is a home brew, a Little Creatures Pale Ale clone that I brewed. It's close. One of those things. It takes a few stabs at it to get it right. But anyway, today I'm going to make a amber ale. It's my own recipe. I'll post it somewhere and let you know where it is, probably down the bottom. Yesterday I finally made it to the home brew store. I've got 500 grams of chocolate malt, a kilo of Crystal Malt, 6 kilos of dextrose, and 5 kilos of Brew malt dried extract. I won't be using all that in this brew, but it's a lot cheaper to buy in bulk. It's going to start with 100 grams of chocolate malt and 250 grams of the Crystal, which I've already weighed out. That's it there. I'm going to have to crack this, which means I'll put it in a Ziploc bag and roll over it a few times with a rolling pin just to crack the grain. You want to try and crack each grain. You don't want it too fine. You don't want to make it dust. You just want the grain cracked. Alright, there's the grain. You can see the darker chocolate grain in there, maybe, and the Crystal. And I'll just lay that flat on the bench, spread it right out, and hit it with a rolling pin. But there's the grain laid out in the Ziploc bag, and I'll just hit that with a rolling pin like that and roll it. I won't show it all. You don't do it too hard, because you'll make it too fine a powder of it. You just want to crack each grain. There's my grain after it's been cracked. What I'm going to do is 2 litres of water in a pot on the stove, get it to about 70 degrees, add this, and let it steep, give it a few stirs, and let that sit there for half an hour. Put the lid on, turn the heat off. Well, I've added the grain to the couple of litres of water that I cracked. The water was about just under 70 degrees. I put the grain in, and it's come down now to about, I gave it a few stirs, it's about the mid-60s, which is fine. It's about 67 actually. But if I put the lid on now and just leave that for half an hour, that's all you have to do. While that's steeping, what I'll do is I'll sanitize everything I need to sanitize. My work area, the fermenter, everything else I need, the sieves. It's not so important because we're going to boil it after it, but I just clean everything anyway. And for this recipe today, I'll be using, this is just an unhopped Cooper's 1.5 kilo amber malt. I'll be using 1.9 kilo of the dry malt I showed earlier. I won't be adding any dextrose to this recipe. The alcohol's up high enough, so it's going to be all malt. And I'll also get my hops ready. I'm using Magnum hops for bittering, and I'm going to flavour with some Cascade and Columbus Tomahawk hops. Alright, that's been steeping now for half an hour. It's a very cold day here. It's down to 60 degrees. That's okay. That's okay. We're not mashing, we're only steeping. There are my hops. I've measured out, just wrapped in foil and written on them what they are for when I add them later. But I'm going to sieve this into my boil pot. Sorry for the light. I double sieve it. I've got a really fine one and my bigger one for when I use more grain. I prefer to use the bigger one when it's shop milled, but when I do it at home with the rolling pin, I like to use the finer sieve to try and keep as much as the husk and stuff out from the grain as I can. I won't video this because it's just on handheld. So there is my sieve. Most of it's been drained out. There's still a bit left in the pot that I steeped in. I've got some water here that's not boiling. You don't want it boiling, but it's hot water. Just mix that in with what's left there. Stir that a little bit up just to get the rest of the goodness out of there. Pour it through the other grain. Like that. Doesn't matter if there's a little bit left. My sieve's full, so I won't put any more in. And then I just run some of that water through the grain just to get the rest of the goodness out. Alright, I'll just let that sit there and drain for a minute. Meanwhile, I've had my tin, 1.5 kilo tin of amber malt, unhopped. Just heating in some hot water in the sink. It'll make it pour easier. I'll add that to my boil pot. So I've emptied that tin, pull it back a bit, emptied that tin into my boil pot, the tea from the grain, stirred it in. And now what I'm going to do is just top this up with water to the 10 litre mark. You can, as you can see, this is just a stainless tin steel boil pot. It hasn't got any level marks on it. But what I've done, I'm a cheapo. I've got an old wooden spoon. I've made a notch in it where 10 litres is in this pot. I've measured it before. I don't have to be sterile yet because this is going to be boiled. So I just use this old wooden spoon and I fill it up with water till it gets to that mark. And I know there's 10 litres in there. So what I've done, I've topped that up. I don't know if you can see the mark on the spoon there. Just with water out the tap. So I know there's 10 litres in there and that's what I want. So what I do now is I just make sure it's all stirred in. I've stirred it a few times already. And turn the heat on and get it up to the boil. The boil has started. I'm just going to let that settle down for a little while so I don't get a boil over, and watch my heat. And I'll add my 15 grams, that's Magnum, that's going to be my bittering hop. That's all I need for an hour boil. Meanwhile, who's on? Jake's on, playing with his nuts.
I heard it. I swear, I heard something coming right from the jar. I put my ear right up against the jar.
The jar of nuts he's talking about, of course. But all right, so we've got a nice rolling boil here at the moment. Right. That's why I boil at 10 litres and not the full pot, because I get a nice boil on 10 litres. If the pot's full, it just doesn't work as well. So in a minute I'll put this down and I'll add the 15 grams of Magnum. I'll boil that for 50 minutes. I'll add the other flavour hops and boil for another 10. It's been boiling now for 50 minutes. It's time to add my flavouring hops. This is 10 grams of Columbus and 15 grams of Cascade, and this goes for another 10 minutes. We'll add it in, boil that for another 10. Okay, so that's I've just turned off. I had my flavouring hops and boiled for 10 minutes. It's off the heat now. I've weighed out my, there's a kilo in here and there's 0.9 of a kilo in the another bowl I've got of my light dry malt. I'll stir that in. Stir that in first while it's hot, and get onto the cooling down of it. Alright, that's all mixed in now. And this is where the controversy will happen with my brewing. I'm going to add a couple of litres of frozen water to chill down the wort as quick as I can. Sometimes I use refrigerated water, but today I'm not going back to my frozen. I've never had any problems from it at all. So what I've got here is was an ice cream container in the freezer. It's not actually completely frozen, nearly frozen, but that'll cool my wort down very quickly. And that's what I want. I don't want the water to stay hot. I want to cool the wort down and get the yeast in. Alright, so that frozen block is in there now. Won't take long to defrost. In the meantime, I'll get my thermometer. I'll put that in to be able to measure what temperature it gets down to. I want it down to the low 20s. I have another 2 litres here, just in case that first batch wasn't enough to get it down cold enough. And that first block wasn't enough. It's defrosted already because it wasn't quite frozen. I put it in late last night, so I'll add this other block, and that'll help. Stir that up. Alright, that's got it down. Yeah, so what I'm doing, just in the laundry sink. It was really full on. I could cover that with a bit of Glad wrap the whole, but I'm not too worried. It'll be okay. This won't take long at all. Just a little bit of cold water in around the bottom, and this won't take it long at all to drop down. It was actually, when I said before it was 40, it was 40.6, so it's down half a degree already. This won't take long at all. And I've still got to add cold water to it yet, so it'll be fine. So meanwhile, my fermenter's draining from the sanitizer. We'll go and check on the... so that's down to 30 already, 31, and that's only been, a couple of minutes. So that's probably enough, because I've got to add cold water to that, and I want it down to about 20. And here at the moment, it's cold, miserable, and raining. So the tap water will probably be about 15 degrees. So I think that'll probably work out okay. I'll take it out. So that's me cooled down. Water got in there. Sanitised bucket. I'm going to strain it this time, just to get the bittering hops out. So that's in some sanitizer. Put that in there, and I'll strain that into that. So I've just strained that in. Sorry for my wife talking in the background, but it's okay. There wasn't much, and this isn't a very fine sieve, but it took out some of it. Now I'm going to add these. We're going to go in at flame out, but I just want to strain the Magnum out. So I'll add these other 2 batches of hops. It's another 15 grams of Cascade and 10 grams of Columbus. I'll add them now, and then I'll top up with cold water. Alright, I've started topping up. I stopped at, well, it's a bit hard to see down there. It's about 21 litres. I'm topping up to 23. It's at 25.4, so it's still a bit hot. So I can keep adding cold water. Let's get up a little bit. Preferably I would have liked it a degree or two lower. By the time I add another couple of litres of cold water, that's going to drop it enough to pitch the yeast. Preferably you want it down to about 21, 22 when you pitch. I do anyway. And then I'll brew. I'll pitch the yeast while it's a little bit warm, get it started, and I'll brew at 20 degrees. Now I've put that couple of litres of water in. I want to give this a good stir. I'm going to get as much oxygen into the water as I can. But I'll give it a stir for a little bit longer, get some oxygen into the water for the yeast. You want it in there. All that boiling I did takes a lot of the oxygen out of the water. It's actually smelling really good. Smelling really, really good. Jake's still on. Turn Jake. Shut up, Jake. Turn him down. Alright. So I got it in there as my 23 litres. I've got my hydrometer in there. It stops around, from what I can see, it's a bit hard to see for you, it's about 54, 55 maybe. That's a little bit higher than I expected, but that's alright, I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. The colour's good. That'll clear a lot, of course. The colour's good, I like it. So now that the temperature's down to, where is it? The 24 is fading, so it's under 24. I would have rathered it at like 22. So it's about 23 degrees, which is fine for the yeast. I would have rathered it at 22. And look, I could wait. I could leave it like that. It's cold enough here, it'll only take half an hour. But as I said, that looks a lot different on camera than what it actually looks like where I'm standing. I reckon it's about 23, and the last time I measured it, it was just under 24 too, so I know it is. So that's right to pitch, and it's cold here, so that's going to drop down. The yeast will pick it up a little bit, but it's cold enough here that'll drop down in the low 20s, lower than that very, very quickly. And I'll add my sapphire yeast. All I'll do is pull the lid off, stir it in, and I'll whack it in my brew fridge, which is set at 20 degrees. And all will be good. Now there's one last thing I do that you don't see in many videos. That's just boiled. I don't know if you can hear it still boiling. And I fill a coffee cup up with it. A clean coffee cup. And just because I took the reading out of the tap before, you don't want to, it's going to dry. So you just give the tap, that's just boiling water, and give it a few rinses in boiling water. That way you haven't got the, that's Jake still yakking over there, that way you haven't got the old sticky, sugary full wort hanging around the tap, because you'll get bugs and stuff and things after it. That's all it takes. I might have, and that's the last thing I do. All I've got to do now is stick it in the brew fridge. Alright, there it is in my brew fridge. All I have is it's a bit hard to see because of a lamp down there with a light bulb. I put this old business shirt around the fermenter just to stop any other light coming in. Not much light will be going up there when I shut the door, but just to make sure I just put this business shirt around it and shut the door. Show you, there you go, shirt's buttoned up around it. that's the heat source down there. And I've just got that's an old plant pot that sits underneath the shelf that just helps support the weight of the fermenter on the shelf. Does the job. As I said, I'm always cheaper, anything cheap. It's my homemade temperature control there. And shut that, leave it. Bang, old fridge, done. I'll check that probably tomorrow morning just to make sure it's fermenting. There shouldn't be a problem. That's it.